Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this special World Mother Pride event. It's such a great honor to have you with us today from Town Hall in New York. And it's raining here in New York, and this is the one time where we can truly say that it's not raining on our parade, because we're all inside in our homes or wherever we are, and we have an incredible program for you tonight. So I'm Murray Nossel, and I'm the creator of the World Mother Storytelling Project. And the World Mother Storytelling Project is a movement. It's a movement to teach all of us how to listen to and retell the stories of our mothers. This is an insurrection of mother stories. It's a way of inscribing the stories of mothers into the legacy of the world. Now that sounds like a really lofty mission, you know, this big global mission, but actually everything that I know about World Mother from all the thousands of stories that I've heard in the past 25 years of teaching, listening, and storytelling, everything I know tells me that at the individual level, there is tremendous transformation and healing possible when we listen to and tell the stories of ourselves and others. So this is a way for you to really transform your relationship with your mother, your relationship with yourself, and your relationship with your community. And what I'm going to be teaching you to do in this session tonight is really to teach you how to listen to the story of your mother and to be able to tell the story of your mother. And if your mother's not alive and she's passed, well, you can tell her story anyway by tapping into your memory of your mother. Now, what you'll find is if you really allow yourself to listen within yourself to the story of your mother, something magical happens. And that magic is that your heart opens. Now, we all have different relationships with our mothers. Some people have wonderful relationships with their mothers, and others maybe have resentment or unfinished business. But within each of us is a longing to be connected with our mothers. And when we tap into that longing, this is a place of tremendous heart opening. By the end of this event tonight, I want each one of you to be equipped to go away and make a 4-minute video of your mother's story. You'll be the one to tell that story. And what's more, I'm going to show you how to tell that story in your mother's voice. So, I have the most incredibly fabulous lineup of guests for you today. And this includes Puya Moseni, who's going to be our very first guest. I have extraordinary archival footage to share with you from work that I did with people with AIDS in the early 90s. I'm introducing you to a family of 2 moms and their adult kids. We're going to be visiting them at their home in Union City, New Jersey, dropping in to sit in their kitchen with them and share some stories. And then we'll be traveling to Oaxaca, Mexico, where we'll be seeing the incredible transformation that occurs between the artist Luis Enrique Garcia and his mother when the space of conversation opens up. So within this space of fabulousness, I am very happy to bring in the fabulous Puya Moseni, who is going to tell her mother's story in her mother's voice. So here is Puya Moseni as her mother.
My name is Shaheen Haydari. I was born and raised in Tehran, Iran. I'm a daughter of a military family, and I was a teacher for 35 years. I taught English as a second language, both in Iran and United States. I have two children, a boy and a girl. My daughter, my younger child, is transgender, and when she was very young, I noticed that her behavior was very different from my son. In the toys she liked to play with, how she showed affection towards me, my mother, she liked to wear my clothes, play with my makeup, and I was concerned. I thought that there was something wrong with that. I took her to a therapist when she was 3, and the therapist just watched Puya play and told me not to encourage this, not to discourage this. This is a phase and it will just pass. So I followed that guidance. I didn't take her to a therapist until she was 11. She was still different, good at school, but different. And this therapist had a very aggressive approach, which I was very disappointed in. He proceeded to scold Puya and somewhat humiliate her in her behavior. This is not what a boy does. This is not manly behavior. And here I'm watching my 11-year-old child cry because she's being humiliated. And I'm thinking to myself, why did I do this? If I wanted to scold my child, I could have done it myself. I brought her to for us to get guidance, to be helped, and that is not what we got. And that discouraged me from taking her to another therapist for many years until she was 16 and she was withdrawn, isolated, depressed. And this therapist was recommended because he had specialty in gender and sex, and he told me that my child was a transsexual, had gender identity disorder, which I heard as the fact that she's sick and she needs to be cured, because all I'm thinking is, how is this trans child going to have a future? She won't be able to marry, she won't be able to work, she won't have a place in society, she won't be safe, she won't have the standing in society that I wanted my child to have. So I went on looking for a cure, and my husband and I did not see eye to eye on this, because he somehow saw me at fault for this, as mothers usually get the blame for their children. And I was desperate enough that at my sister's recommendation, I went to this religious place, this well that people go and they throw money and they bargain with God and they ask for a cure. And I didn't believe in any of it, but I was desperate enough that I was going to do that. My husband drove us, but he didn't come in. As I said, we'd have a united front on this. My sister and I went, I threw the money in, I asked for a cure, I bartered with God, but there was no cure. And then when I saw my child trying to commit suicide, cutting herself, taking pill overdoses to end her life, I realized that we had a choice between an alive trans daughter or a dead son. And I'm a parent, and I wanted my child to be alive, so we made the choice. I wanted to have an alive trans child, if that was the only way. And I set out outside of Iran to find a place for her to be able to transition, have her surgery, and have her life. And that's how I ended up in the United States. And then Puya followed 20-something years ago, and we found our life here, and she started her transition, and she had her surgery, and we started a whole new life. And I'm very glad that I made that decision, because of that decision, my child is alive. And everything else that we had to go through was worth it. Because I believe that ultimately all parents want to protect their children. And that's what I did. And I hope other parents do the same thing.
Thank you, Puya, for that most magnificent story And Puya made that video on her mobile phone. And as you could see and hear, she was talking in the voice of her mother. So now I'd like to show you how we went about creating this story that you just heard and saw Puya telling. So I'm going to drop you into the first session that I had with Puya and her mother, Shaheen. And please note just how exquisitely Puya listens to her mother. Because what we're going to see as we go on with these stories today is that the listening, the capacity to listen, is crucial in the act of storytelling. So it's my real pleasure to drop you into this session that was held last week. So when did you first reveal to your mother that there was something about you that you wanted to change?
I think she knew before I had words for it.
Okay, so why don't you ask your mother now? All right. Okay, ask her. Okay, and so it's going to be, right, go ahead. You seem to know what you want to do.
Well, you are an independent woman from a Muslim country at the, period of time that we're in. What has this journey been like for you, being mother of a trans child, starting from when I was a child until we came here? Okay. Maybe even after that.
Am I allowed to say, first of all, this adjective, adding the adjective Muslim or whatever? In this case,
I just wanted it to be specific.
Yeah. I mean, being a mother means so much. It doesn't have to be this mother, that mother, Western mother, Eastern mother, Northern, South. Animals, the way they take care of their offspring, like you see cats, bears, the way they carry them by holding them in their mouth between their teeth. At the age of 11, I took you to a psychiatrist this time, and he, all right, started saying, boys don't do that in this country. That's not. So you started crying. And after that, I even didn't want to take you to any doctor anymore to save you this anguish and this terrible experience, until a friend of mine said, you know who she was, Bibi, recommended that, or suggested that I should consult psychiatrist that was expert in sex in youngsters. And then after a few months, the doctor told us that you are a transsexual. Even we didn't have the word in Persian. So I said, what does that mean? And he said, the mind and the body do not agree. And I thought probably we need a very lengthy, let's say, consultation with this doctor. And I said, so my daughter Puya is going to be your patient for a long time, for a few years. She said, he said no. Her body has to be changed. That at that time, I don't know how I felt. I was overwhelmed. I don't think the strength of words that I have learned in English, they are strong enough to express the feeling that I thought. And I cried all the way home while I was driving.
Just notice the impact of that story on you right now, the way that that story touches you. And notice too what a significant part Puya had in the creation of that story by simply listening to her mother. And when I say simply listening, I don't mean that listening is simple. I mean that that's all she was doing. And it was that listening that allowed her mother to provide this really touching story. So the first thing that we really have to do when getting the story from our mothers is to learn how to listen to them. And perhaps if you have a very strong and positive relationship with your mother, you might think, oh, it's going to be very easy to listen to her. And if you have some resentments towards your mother, you may think it's going to be very difficult. Well, in actual fact, it always takes quite a lot of discipline to be able to listen not only to your mother, but to any other person telling their story, because we come to listening with many, many preconceptions. So just to be able to listen openly requires practice. And that's what I would like to practice with you all right now, so you can get the experience of what it's like simply to listen. So I compare listening to a bowl, and telling is like the liquid that's poured into that bowl. So just as the bowl gives the liquid its shape, so does your listening give telling its shape, give another's telling its shape. Now, listening always has to begin with you. It's not someone else's responsibility to listen to you. Only you can give your mind and your heart the instruction to listen. So if you will, please close your eyes with me right now, and let's see what it's like to listen. Firstly, just take a breath. And with that breath, arrive in the place that you're in right now. And notice how your mind might be swirling with thoughts. Maybe you're feeling strong emotions. Maybe you're thinking about your own mother. In any case, bring your attention to your mother. Think back to when you were a child and picture yourself with your mother in a certain situation as a child. So what are you aware of right now? What are you aware of in your body? What are you aware of in your mind and in your heart? Think about your mother and try and conjure maybe some time when you felt very deep love for her. And notice where that lands in your body. And now, remember a time when you felt angry, resentful. How does that change your listening? What happens to your listening when you go from this space of love to imagining or remembering a time of resentment? Remember, because your body remembers everything that ever happened to you. Remember yourself as an infant in your mother's arms. What comes up into your listening when you remember that? Remember all the people Who are your mothers? Maybe grandmother, maybe a nanny, maybe a neighbor. Think of all these mothers. And when you're ready to, please open up your eyes. Take a moment to reflect on what that listening meditation was like for you. What were the things that made it difficult for you to listen? Were there many thoughts occurring in your mind? Were there judgments? Were there feelings? Were there strong emotions? None of these things are wrong. What's most important is for us to be aware of what is occupying our listening. Because once we are aware of it, we can then make the choice to let go of those obstacles to the best of our ability. But the first step is always self-awareness. Become aware of what those obstacles are, and then let them go through the breath and through the decision to open your mind. It's as simple and as difficult as that. So now I'd like to move on to the telling aspect. We've looked at the listening aspect, and now let's look at the telling aspect. So the important principle here is that there's a reciprocal relationship between listening and telling. This is a completely dynamic relationship where the listening creates the telling, and then the telling creates the listening. And we're going to see this in the next segment with Puya and Shaheen. But before we do that, I want to explain to you one fundamental principle about storytelling as I see it. And that is, any story is the answer to the question, what happened? And what I mean by what happened is that we are only describing things that could be picked up by the 5 senses. So in other words, if you could see it, smell it, hear it, taste it, or touch it, it happened. But if the senses can't detect these things, they didn't happen as far as story is concerned. So judgments, opinions, commentaries, thoughts, feelings are not part of the what happened method. The what happened method is a show, not tell method. So what you're going to see in the segments that follow is that I'll work with Puya and her mother to get closer to the details that reveal the story that Shaheen told to Puya and that Puya was then able to generate as her 4-minute story.
The building was a part of this complex, like much is the front of it is kind of like garden. There is a parking lot. We go in this open kind of space, and then there is a building in there. I think, I don't know, did I have to get a chador? Chador is something that Iranian women wear, and it comes to their ankle. You know, it's just, this is in addition to a scarf.
Okay.
I don't exactly remember, but I went there. And I say this to other people with not feeling ashamed of what I did. It's desperation. You don't find a logical answer.
And that is,
you know?
So did you speak to anyone in this encounter, or was it just a matter of putting the money into this kind of well? Did you have a conversation with anyone?
Well, it was my sister that took me there, and my husband drove us there. He didn't come to put the money. I said, I'm doing things my own way. And I was looking for an answer. I was looking for an answer. And then...
Were you praying? Did you pray?
like these transactions with God. And I've heard other people do that. If this happens, I will do this. I can't remember because probably I was not sincere, you know, and nothing was answered. So I even forgot about it. But
Well,
then,
I'm sorry to disturb you here or interrupt, but I'm very curious, Puya, what would you like to know about this experience of your mum going to this place? But try and ask a question that can take us, you know, in an in-depth kind of way into this experience about what happened. Have you heard about this before, Puya?
I know about it, not in detail. I didn't know actually that my dad had driven. I knew that it was my mom and my aunt, but I didn't know that my dad had driven. And as my mom was telling the story, I was thinking, where was I when all of this stuff was happening?
probably you came with us. We took you. I don't know. No,
well,
probably not.
I guess that, you know, because we may not agree about many things, and that's fine. But I've always thought of you as an intelligent person. So here you have gone to this place that you don't even completely believe in. And what was it you were hoping to find in, like, as specific, when you pray for something, you're praying for something specific. So what was it you were hoping, considering I know that you don't believe in that, what was it you were hoping you would get from this thing that you didn't even believe in?
That somehow, I don't know, the God, okay, universe would make a change in your brain, in the way you thought, because he said that your brain, your mind doesn't agree with your body. So it would change that kind of, that theory that this doctor in Canada tries to, I don't know, what is it, to put his patient in the right way so that they forget about being gay and so on.
Conversion?
Yeah, conversion. Yeah.
But then I will ask a second question. But here you were, having gone through this journey with me for the 16 years up to that point.
But I didn't know that there was going to be a physical changing, right?
So what had you thought was going to?
I had no idea until you told me. Even I didn't think you were gay because I was so ignorant. I told you we used to call gays perverts. And I thought perverts are the offsprings of some perverts.
Some other perverts.
And I did not consider myself as a pervert.
And you were?
I was just hoping. I was just desperately hoping and looking for an answer that would prevent all this that was like a nightmare.
So were you asking for an answer, or were you asking for a cure?
Answer would be a cure.
No, I mean, like you said, I was hoping for an answer. So it's like, then you went there hoping that
it would change that. Yeah, I mean, as stupid as that is, but
I don't know if it's stupid. It's a little hurtful, but I mean, we're also saying it from the point of view of now and judging something 26 years ago.
6, 7 years.
Notice there the reciprocal relationship between listening and telling. Just how Puya is able to listen to her mother, even though Shaheen is saying some things that are painful memories and which Puya even finds hurtful. But Puya is able to be aware of those feelings, to articulate them and to let them go, and then bring in the understanding. This happened a long time ago. So listening then is the central act here, the capacity to really be willing to face what the other person has to say. So I spoke to Shaheen this morning, and she told me that she really wanted to be able to inspire other mothers of LGBTQ community to really embrace their children and to be willing to be advocates for their children. And what a moving and extraordinary effort Shaheen has done in that direction. Talking of which, I would like to tell you the origin story of the World Mother Storytelling Project. So 2006, I learned that my parents had been carjacked and held hostage at gunpoint in Johannesburg, where they lived. And I found out afterwards that my mother had saved her life and my father's life by being able to reach into the hearts of the carjackers who had every intention of killing them. They had to kill them so they could make off with the car and my parents wouldn't be able to contact the police. But my mother just listened to them, spoke to them, and in that moment, the relationship became an essentially human one, and these carjackers finally dropped my parents back home again. Now, people commented to me afterwards, wow, what an amazing mother you have, Murray. I mean, you must have learned so much from her. And I said, well, actually, you know, I wasn't that much raised by my mother as I was by a beloved nanny. My mother was a concert pianist, and my nanny was the one who took care of me, picked me up from the school bus, made me my school lunches. So I realized I needed to go back to South Africa to really discover who my mother was. This mother who was able to reach into the hearts of people who had intended to kill her. And I went back and I spent 3 weeks just listening to my mother's life story and hearing from her perspective why she had made the decisions that she had made, such as being a working mother when many mothers didn't work. In the process of doing this, of listening to my mother's story, I could let go of resentments, assumptions that I had about her, and actually really come to appreciate all the gifts that my mother had given me. The gifts of music, the gifts of art, the gifts of listening, and the gifts of communication. My grandparents were refugees from Eastern Europe. They were fleeing persecution. And when they came to South Africa, they never told stories about their pasts. They just got on with their new lives. The nanny who raised me, Paulina Modisane, after she retired and went back to the small town in the desert that she had come from, I never saw her again. And I tried very hard to track down what had happened to her. But talk about Black lives not mattering. In apartheid South Africa, Black people were numbers and not names. And since I didn't have her number, I couldn't find her. Every time people die without telling their stories, it's like a whole library burns down. And I learned this so forcibly in the early 90s when I was working in a program for people with AIDS. Now, this was before the protease inhibitors came out, which completely changed the nature of the epidemic. In those days, AIDS was more or less a death sentence. And my job was to help my clients really come to terms with the fact that they had AIDS and that they were probably going to die. What I noticed in working in this AIDS program was when my clients did die, their belongings were put into garbage bags, and nobody came to claim those bags. And so people died, leaving nothing of themselves behind. And I realized that the only thing we really can leave behind are our stories. And those of us who are listening carry the stories with us into the future. Now, what you're about to see are some incredibly courageous people who in 1994 chose to tell their stories publicly. You'll see a video made by Gay Men's Health Crisis, which captured the stories of people in my storytelling group. Now, I don't know whether Sharon and Bernard and Wisdom are alive anymore. I've tried to track them down and I couldn't. So if anyone knows of where they are and they're still alive, please let them know just how meaningful their stories have been over these many, many years. So now I'd like to share with you the stories of Bernard, Wisdom, and Sharon.
Attending a storytelling group, it allows me just to be me and remember the happy times in my life, because me as an individual, I will tend to focus on the tragedies and find solutions and explanations and why me and all that.
You know, storytelling is just not about sad things or being positive. It's about whatever you feel at that moment. You know, a memory, a touch, a loved one.
Each story I hear, I have some kind of life experience with it, if you look at it, you know, and that's what's wonderful about it. You know, you can laugh at some of the tragic parts, too. You know, sometimes you hear people laughing, someone sharing something tragic. You say, that's a terrible thing to share that and then to be laughed at, but it's not, it's an identification, because you can say, well, honey, I got something to tell you later. You know, you were some kind of leper or whatever, and it's not that. Like, I have times when I'm in my tragedy mode, and you know, I'm very Camille about it, and my life is over, and then I think, honey, I had some fun using out there. I wouldn't suggest it for anybody, but there's some terrible things I did. Like, I was in drags, and I'd be going into an abandoned building with no lights, have maybe 2 stairs on the entire staircase. I had on heels, a back out dress, honey, but I could make those stairs and dare anybody to take my stuff from me. But I was a fierce diva, so I thought. You know, and you can laugh at that crap, you know, and life goes on, and you start to have a new appreciation for things. And that's what makes life so worthwhile.
The thing about storytelling group and why we're here today is really about, like, this is your opportunity to tell it the way it is. It's not how you would like it to be, or, you know, putting together a good story to give a good impression. It's just about having an opportunity to say what happened, the way it was, in an environment where no one's going to judge you, where no one's going to interpret what you're going to say, where no one's going to confront you for having had the life that you had and for telling the story that you tell. It's simply an opportunity to tell it. And it gives the person who's telling the story an opportunity to see their life in exactly that kind of way. Like, this is my life, take it or leave it. This is what happened to me. Take it or leave it.
I was sick one day. I had a high fever, and when your fever goes out at a certain point, you become a little delirious, yeah. And I called here because I couldn't stay awake, and I was getting scared. And I called here, and I asked for Vicky, and I called her mom on the phone. My mother died when I was 5, and so that word is like something foreign to me. That's like me speaking Spanish. I don't know that word. And the next day, she told me that I had called her mom, and she cried. I cried too, but she cried because love, you know.
So I didn't know which story meant the most to me, the when I first gave birth, or the story about my mom, but the story about the birth is too graphic. So I'll go with the one about my mom.
Lord have mercy.
I had shared a story in group, and it really choked me up. You know, I come across, and in this room I can come in here and I can be me, and I can be afraid, and I can be vulnerable, and people are there for me, and that's what's so wonderful about this group. But the story I want to tell is about my mom. I had told it here. You know, I was very self-centered, and when I was out there using drugs and things, I was out of touch in any warmth and any loving feelings I had ever had for anyone, because I had to survive, you know. And when I came into recovery, things started to flood back, and one of the most precious memories I have of my mother because she went through a lot for us. You know, we were poor. It was either feast or famine. My father would quit a job at the drop of a hat, although he had 5 children. Either we had a lot or we had very little. And my mother would always cook for dinner, and she'd always make sure we had a pork chop or a chicken leg or whatever. And I used to say, Mama, well, why you don't have any? Why you not eating any meat? Oh, hush, child, I don't need any meat. I'm not hungry right now. I'll eat the vegetables. And it took me years later to realize that there was no meat, and she made sure her children had. I remember a terrible argument her and my father had. She said, you quit your jobs always around the holidays. I tell you what, Charles, this year these kids will have a damn Christmas. And these things, memories just started to flood back, and this process happened in the storytelling group. One of my happiest memories was my mother was covered in biscuit dough, because in those days people made their own homemade cheese biscuits, and they were about the size of her breast. You know, they were very full and nourishing. You know what I mean? I love you, girl. And it was just so nice to remember that, you know, for it almost to be reincarnated in my heart. That, you know, my mother did a lot for me. There's nothing I wouldn't do for her.
I want you to know, and this is to the world, I want you to know that it's not a gay clique or a woman clique or NA clique. It's a people clique.
Confronted with the real strong possibility of dying, it's amazing to me that people went straight to the stories of their mothers, this primary relationship with their mothers. I'm indebted to these incredibly courageous people for sharing their stories, for using those stories to change the shape of the epidemic, and for teaching me just how important stories are, because our stories are all that remains of us when we pass from this world. So it's my really great pleasure right now to drop you into a family in Union City, New Jersey. And this is happening live. It is not pre-recorded. And so let's see what happens when we switch to Enid and Doris Carpe Diaz and with children and Jessica Suarez. So, hello, folks. Well, there we're getting a good wave, and that's great. No echoing of sound. So, Gabriel and Jessica, this is really your opportunity to ask your moms to tell you a story that they've never told you before, or to tell you a version of a story that you might have heard, but you want more details. Now, I don't really know what you're going to ask. So we're all waiting here with bated breath, and fire away.
Well, I just want to give a happy cheers to all the justice. Happy Pride Month, everybody. I was going to ask them like landmark opportunities they had in their relationship that showed their love for each other and their, you know, their foundation, being the lesbian and pride that they shared this month.
So what specifically would you like to hear? What story specifically would you like them to tell you?
So as children, we've heard, of course, like the PG version of how they met. And we thought for Pride Month, they can elaborate the struggles, or if there weren't any struggles, of what exactly they had to go through to actually meet.
Okay, so you basically want to hear the story of how they met.
The actual story, not the PG Disney story.
You're worried about what
we have the original napkin that Enid and Doris shared. This number, I don't think is valid for anybody who wants to use it. So, but it's a good number that Doris used. You gotta call Enid back.
So we're gonna pass the microphone over.
Everyone loves the story of how people met. You know, it's just one of our favorite stories to ever hear. So go on, Doris, Enid, it's over to you. Tell us what happened.
Okay. All right, you good? Can you hear us? Can you hear us okay?
Yeah, you've got a big echo there.
Okay. Well, you know, there was a bar, a women's bar, on I think it was 53rd Street in Manhattan.
Yes.
Julie's. And I think everybody knows.
Yeah.
And I was there on a date with someone else.
Ooh, there it is.
And I saw Doris across the bar, and I thought, whoa, you know, she's really attractive. And I had a martini, and so I, you know, kind of gave her a look, and so a guy said, "Oh, me," and I was like, "No, her," you know. And so we, you know, I sent her for a drink, and then she came over, and we started talking and dancing, and you know, we're lesbians. So what do you do on the second date? You move in.
No, that's not how it went.
Mostly.
No, I think what yes, we did meet at the bar, and yes, Gabriel, that is Enid's napkin where she wrote her number down. She had some line about there was a party, or
It's my birthday.
it was it was your birthday. It was his birthday coming up. It was something like that. So we started going out, but we ended up working and living when working a block from each other.
No.
So coincidentally, we did, we'd meet for lunch. We'd meet for have a cup of coffee, and we talked, and then I told her about the children, and that's kind of where it started. The kids met her like a month or so, right after meeting, and they were, it was love at first sight, at least for Gabriel. Jessica was still in the protective state, the 10-year-old.
Yes. Many a date where she sat between the two of us.
But it was great. It was, it was good. The family merged together. A lot of obstacles as far as, my hesitancy on where how the children would present in their lives. I didn't want my choice to be their choice. So we kind of tried to normalize as much as possible.
Okay, all right. So let's go back. Gabriel, Jessica, we want to get really into the specifics here because we've gone through a story that's taken us through time in a very quick way here. So let's go right back to that bar, right? And I want to know, why did you ask them, what did they talk about? What was that original conversation that they had once the napkin had been exchanged, and or once the drink had been sent? What did
I didn't know it was on a date to begin with, so I don't know how awkward that must have been back in the day. There's more social interacting back then there is now to interrupt, another date. Nowadays you could just ping and go somewhere else, but I'm assuming that must have been more awkward.
Yeah. Never seen easy.
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
I'm never to say dating's easy, but in our time or in their time, but the fact that that 5 seconds of courage, to write your number down and have that line, that moment of pride that you had, that to find bigger love and to let that be a labor of love that you have to endure.
Okay, so let's go back to that first moment. All right. So Doris, Enid it offers you a drink. Like, does she bring you the drink, or does the person at the bar say that lady over there is wanting to buy you a drink?
You know what? For me, it was more about her persistence. Her, in the beginning, dating, it's you're at a bar, you see someone you like, and they take you, and you kind of have that weird kind of awkward, do I talk or do I not talk? And I thought that Enid didn't have that hesitancy.
Okay.
I was
something about her.
Yeah.
How close to you did she sit? How close did she sit?
No sitting. It was all standing. It's a very, very small bar.
It's a small bar. So you're standing around. What was she wearing?
Oh, probably all black. That's all she wore. She's a New Yorker.
White shirts. This is the photo.
Oh no, that's not the photo.
Okay.
And Enid, what was Doris wearing?
Gosh, you know what? I cannot remember what she was wearing. All I remember was she had the most beautiful smile.
Oh,
I didn't see anything but an incredible smile, and also she was a bit taller than me, so
I had heels
she had
on.
heels on, like really tall heels. So between her smile and her breasts, which is really where my head was, that's pretty much what I saw.
Jessica, had you heard about these heels before?
Did you hear about the what? I'm sorry.
We heard about this before.
We've lost you, Jessica.
No, I haven't heard these details before.
You haven't heard these details. So what would you like to know? Now, give us, we want a really cinematic detail right now, and we want to stay in that bar. What do you want them to tell you about? Imagine that this is a movie.
I just think it's since it's Pride Month, like they said, it's a cubby hole. It's not really, and how New York City bars are. They're not huge. Back then, it was probably like a hiding place for gays or lesbians, and that's what people want to hear more about. How I want to say, like, not a struggle, but the hiding part, I guess.
Yes.
To people, God forbid Enid worked there. I mean, not worked there, but God forbid Enid ran into someone that she worked with, and how awkward it must have been, or Doris, if she ran into a friend that she didn't want her to know that she's out there trying to date or whatever the case may be.
Okay.
That part, I think, would be more.
Let's go to something specific then, all right? So, Doris, why don't you tell us the story of what happened that you went to that bar? What led you going to take us to that night that you went to the bar? Tell us what happened.
It was.
Why were you there?
I was there to meet people. It was a singles night.
No.
Julie's had this shtick that you wear a green dot if you were single and looking, and then yellow if you were in a relationship.
Sure.
One of those kinds of things. So, I was just there to meet someone. I had just gotten out of a relationship, and I was just ready to make new friends. I was new in town. We had moved from Miami, so we were just new in town. And it was just getting to know new people.
But it was Latin night.
It was Latin night.
That's
of
where
course.
the dancing came in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know Enid was a bit more closeted when I met her. I was born and raised in Chelsea. So, I was more fluid in my sexuality and more open with it than Enid would have been. I'm the next generation after, much younger. I'm the next generation after. So I don't feel that shame.
Okay, Enid. So I think to get to where you were going before, Jess, what do you want to know from Enid now about that sort of secretiveness and being in the closet? Again, take us to something very specific.
We didn't know this.
Huh?
We didn't know any of this.
Okay, so what do you want to know about Enid?
So much.
Like what, Gabe? Go on, something specific.
Gosh, so they meet at a bar, another bar in New York. This pride that they have, this foundation they're building, do they get to go? Was that the 2-month anniversary, the 1-month anniversary? Sounds like they moved in the second date. When did you? When was the next milestone in your relationship after meeting up? And I guess after moving on the second date.
Well, I mean, I think that for me, the big milestone was meeting you all. Your mother was very protective about me meeting you all. She wanted to make sure that this was a serious enough relationship.
Yeah.
That she would entrust me to meet her children. I mean, you are her treasures.
Yeah.
What did Doris say to you? Can you remember what she said to you about her children before you met them? And in terms of preparing you for the meeting, what did she say? You say she was protective, but I'm sure she kind of primed you before the meeting.
I think that I'm trying to think back.
I mean, what was it?
I can't really recall specifically what she said about the children. I just remember her feeling that it was really important for her that I be, sort of serious about this relationship before she really wanted me to kind of bond with the kids, or even more importantly, have the kids bond with me.
So do you remember the first time you actually met the kids?
Yes, I do.
What happened? Take us as if it's a movie. Movie.
No, I think, Doris was here in Union City. I lived in Manhattan. I came over and Gabriel was 6, Jessica was 9. And, they were both very, very polite. They were very well behaved. And I just remember thinking, oh, they're so cute. And in many ways, it reminded me very much of my mom, like raising kids on her own. And, and Doris had worked very hard to take care of them. And I remember, like, Gabriel, at one point in time, we went out to breakfast. And Gabriel looked up at me and he said, "Will you hold my hand?" And oh my God, I just melted. It was like he needed me and I needed him. I needed both of them. And I'm going to cry. So, but I needed them, and they had so much love for me, and they embraced me, and I've never felt like I wasn't a part of their hearts, but they just both took my heart, and it's never ended. And so to that, when they were talking about me not being open, I was in the corporate world. There's a 10-year difference in our ages. I wasn't as out, but one of the things that I committed to once we had children was that I would be. I never want my children to feel ashamed of our relationship. I never want them to think it's wrong. And so, it was very important to me. So they helped me grow up. They helped me be a better me.
Wow. And here you are, in fact, on this program, this completely public program on YouTube. So talk about, you're really putting your money where your mouth is, really being so open about your story. And I love that question that you asked, Gabe, about, what was the next milestone, in their relationship? Because all of our relationships have milestones, don't they? So I think that what you've got here as a family is just the very beginning. You've just really scratched the surface of the story of these two incredible mothers that you've got. Because, behind your story, Enid, is a coming out story, right? And how you grew up. And Doris, your story, how you came out. And so what was that like for you, Doris, that night? What do you remember? As if you're telling, you've made a snapshot of it, and you're telling us about this experience of Enid coming to meet your kids. What do you remember?
Oh, I remember being very nervous. I remember being nervous because, as a mother, my children were my world. So my nervousness was, what if they don't like her? What if, this is a problem? So, I had all the what ifs, but,
What did you say to your kids in advance?
Nothing. I met a nice person I want you to meet, a new friend. And they were great about it. I mean, they were both so young and so open. They were, loving the world. But my bigger fear was Jessica, because she was older and she was more aware and more protective of us, very protective of us. So I was afraid that, she wouldn't approve.
Jessica, so take us to a snapshot of what this event was like for you, what this evening was like for you. What do you remember specifically?
It was just a little bit different for me because I was in and out of Catholic school. Most of 90% of my friends just didn't have the same upbringing as me. So it was just a little not protective of my mother per se. It's more of like my life as well. how it's
What
going
do
to
you remember of that night? Just anything you remember. Do you remember what Enid was wearing?
I honestly do not remember meeting them. No idea.
And what
do not remember meeting them. I have a horrible memory.
What do you remember of that?
I do always remember taking the time, like today, hopefully, to tell them I love them. I do remember showering Enid and my mother and my sister with affection, the best I can. The nicest.
No, I'm talking about the first time you met Enid. Do you remember that?
I do remember, like love at first sight. I do remember like instantly, welcoming her family. I don't remember my mom like breaking any like laws or
There wasn't anything illegal back then.
it wasn't illegal. There shouldn't be any laws. Like, of course, okay, who do you could love?
I'm having a really hard time getting you guys to be very specific.
I know. I'm so sorry.
What was Enid wearing? Do you remember what she was wearing?
I do not. Again, our whole family suffering from memory problems.
He was 8 at the time, or 7.
Six.
I'm sorry, 6 at the time.
Yeah.
Okay. Which room did you meet in? Did you meet in the kitchen in which you're all sitting right now?
No.
Wow, this house is a new house that we moved into.
We met a few houses prior to this one. We recently just moved from New York to Miami, Miami to New York, and then to Jersey. So we were just moving out of New York City when my mother met Enid.
In the 90s.
Yeah. Okay. So, Doris, what's this like for you? I mean, Enid has just, been in this transformation of coming out on YouTube, whereas once she was very secretive. What's it like for you to be here sharing this story with the world, so to speak, with your kids?
I'm a New Yorker. We share everything. So, I'm proud of my family. I'm proud of the kids. I think a lot what Enid said was striking close to home, where she said, I wouldn't want them to be ashamed, therefore I couldn't be ashamed. I think I was kind of there. I was never ashamed of anything. I was just, this is my choice and that's what it is. But I felt fear for the kids because I didn't want them to bear the brunt of our choices and other people's agreement, not agreement of it. So I didn't want them to feel that, but at the same time, I wasn't going to live ingenuously. So it was more important.
This is a milestone in your family's life, and I'm so grateful to you for being part of this program today. As I say, you've just scratched the surface of this story because there's so many milestones and there's so much of a backstory here. So we're going to revisit your stories and perhaps we'll return with some more stories that we have excavated. So thank you so much for being here. And we are now going to move to Oaxaca, Mexico.
Thank you.
So, wow, wasn't that fantastic just to drop into this family? And I'm so grateful to them for sharing themselves so genuinely with us. It's tough to get to the what happened. And what's happening? Jeff, you're sending me a message here. I'm just going to keep going. All right, that was for Doris and Enid and the family who are being welcomed to stick around while we carry on. So I'd like to drop you right into this film that I made in 2012 with the incredible Mexican artist, Luis Enrique Garcia. And I was actually making a film at the time about queer artists. But what happened was that Luis Enrique's mother became a character in this film, and I'm so happy to be able to show this to you. It's really the first time it's ever being shown to such a big audience. And here is Luis Enrique Garcia and his mother Elvia in Etla, Mexico.
says naked people make pornography movies in this community. They thought that we were making pornography. When I was making a photo session of my work, which is about masculinity and nudity, I decided to make a set in the outside. We were 4 people. My model, my friend and model that was helping me in the project, 2 other friends, and me. They were nude in the river, and suddenly about 40 men came to arrest us. 40 men to arrest just 4 men. I understand that people doesn't know about art, about photography, but they treat us like if we were criminals. El como aceptar que me gusten los hombres, pues me da mucha pena, pues, ¿no?
No quieres salir del closet todavía, o tú sientes de que te van a discriminar, ¿cómo? ¿Tú
sí,
todavía no
sí,
te aceptas,
sí.
o cómo?
Tú también tienes miedo. Sí. Sí, o sea, el problema no es tanto eso, ¿no? Sino como, por ejemplo, decirle a mi mamá, ¿no? O sea, no sé si...
No sabes todavía si decir.
Ajá, sí. O sea, esas cosas que tú sientes, las platicas con tus papás.
No las platico. Las tengo guardadas aquí, ahí las tengo.
¿Por qué?
No. Yo solo.
¿Cómo sacas esas cosas?
Ah, sí, porque con las lágrimas no lo puedo sacar así, diciéndolo.
With tears. How can I ask Diana to tell me about how she feel if I cannot even be able to express myself with my mother? If I cannot, even I in the world of art, even I am in the world of communication because it's my career, and I asking people that has no tools for do nothing, and asking people to tell about her feelings, and I cannot do that. I'm thinking if I would feel more free if my mother died, and I think, yeah, it could be. She has a book of prayers, and this little book says, free us from prostitutes, murderers, and homosexuals. And I think in the religion that she is, being homosexual is the same that murderer.
Yeah.
Y líbranos, Señor, de las prostitutas, los asesinos y los homosexuales.
Wow. Those exact words.
Las palabras tienen un peso terrible en nosotros, sean para liberarnos o para mantenernos atrapados. a mí me daba pena más bien que tuvieras las fotos. Sí, por eso hasta ni siquiera pensaba invitarte a la exposición. Pero un amigo me dijo que sí, que te invitara, pues, y sí. Y sí, pues me daba miedo, pues, que vieras las fotos. No sé qué ibas a pensar de mí, pues.
Pensé que lo haces por el arte, no por nada morboso ni nada por el estilo.
Como, o sea, cuando la gente habla sobre esas cosas, como que los miedos desaparecen, ¿no? O sea, porque si no se habla...
No desaparecen nunca.
desaparecen.
Cómo llegamos, cómo somos concebidos.
Y por ejemplo, ¿a ti no te importaría si yo tuviera un novio en vez de una novia?
Pues no, hijo, claro que aquí, es una cosa tremenda.
¿Tú crees?
Sí.
¿Por qué?
Porque aquí, quítate. Pueblo chico, infierno grande.
Porque, o sea, yo pensé que, o sea, eso te iba a asustar a ti, pues.
No me asusta, hijo, porque no es una cosa del otro mundo. Y hay que aceptar las cosas como son, no como... Yo como médico te lo digo. Yo como médico te lo digo, pero por lo menos sí, con discreción. Y todos somos iguales. Y muchas veces las personas más humildes tienen el alma más blanca.
Y, oye, y bueno, una vez vi en un libro de que rezabas con amparo, que decía, y Señor, líbranos de las prostitutas, los homosexuales y los criminales.
En el rosario. Sí. No, líbranos, bendícelos. Y ahí lo tengo.
¿Sí?
Sí, pero no líbranos. Y así te digo a ti también, que con cuidado.
Sí.
Porque a veces los golpes son muy duros. ¿Y qué necesidad que sufran?
Hola, mamá. Lo que pasa es que vine a un laboratorio a hacerme la prueba del SIDA. Y ahorita acabamos de recoger los resultados. Y todo salió bien.
Quiero la rosa
sí.
Perlada de
y dice negativo.
El mar, el sol y este cielo tan mío para brindar la noche de mi amor.
Sí.
Well, Luis Enrique and Elvia, I hope you watched that at your home in Etla. I think this is such incredible testimony to the transformation that can happen in a relationship when someone has the courage just to ask the question. And just think that if Elvia would have died without Luis Enrique ever asking her this, he would have been left with that assumption about her. And so he really gave her the chance to tell the story from her perspective. And so incredibly inspirational to see this woman living in a very, very conservative environment, as you could tell, and yet the love for her son transcends all, and she just wants him to be happy. So we're coming to the end of our program now. I have one more story that I want to share with you, and then I want to tell you a lot more about where the World Mother Storytelling Project is going. So you may have watched this program and you might have thought to yourself, you know, my story hasn't been reflected here. I've got a different kind of relationship with my mother. I'm a different kind of person that I saw here, and you know, I don't see myself reflected. Well, please write to us, worldmotherstorytellingproject.org. You can come onto this program. We're going to be holding one of these World Mother Live programs through Town Hall every 2 months. And we are looking for stories. We're looking for mothers and their children of any age, well, got to be 15 or older, I think, to come on here and really go into this listening and storytelling exchange. So finally, I promised you that you would be able to make a 4-minute video of your mother's story told in your mother's voice. You have all that you need to do it now. You need to be able to listen. You need to be able to ask your mother what happened. And then you need simply to construct a 4-minute story based on what you've heard, all the what happened details. Turn your camera onto auto record mode and tell that 4-minute story and send it in to us, because we're also looking for these 4-minute videos to play on World Mother Live. So I'm going to take you now to Doug Safranek, an extraordinary artist in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, telling the story as his mother, Malou Safranek.
My name is Mary Lou Schuler, but when I was in college, my friends started calling me Malou, and I've been Malou ever since. Now, my older brother Bob was married to the Metropolitan Opera star Patrice Munsell, and Patrice had been raised in Spokane, where in the early 1960s, my husband Bill Safranek and I were raising our 6 children. And when Bob and Pat would come for family visits, after dinner we'd sit in the living room, and Bob and Pat would regale us with descriptions of the fancy productions that Pat was working on. And the kids would sit spellbound as they listened to their stories of their travels through Europe and India and the Mideast. Now, it was during one of these evenings that my brother Bob beckoned me into the kitchen and shut the door. Mary Louie said, "You know that Pat and I work with a lot of creative people in New York, and some of them are homosexual men. And I have to tell you, the way Douglas moves his hands, the big words he uses, and his facial expressions, I have a terrible feeling, Mary Lou, that he may be developing into a homosexual. And you know, life for homosexuals is ghastly. I mean, they live by necessity secret and furtive lives, and they're the object of almost universal scorn and ridicule. Really, if there's anything you can do to spare your son this fate, you have to do it. And I actually have heard that there is a new drug therapy out that, if it's administered early enough, can cure children of homosexual tendencies. And you and Bill really ought to look into this. You ought to talk to your family doctor and get Douglas on these drugs as soon as possible for his own sake. However, if you tried everything and the drugs don't work, it's equally important that you tell him that you love him for who he is." Well, what was I to do? I mean, Bob was right about how homosexuals were treated in the society. I know we were both thinking of our sister-in-law's brother, Gordon, who had been a homosexual. Gordon ended up jumping out of a window in his early 20s and falling to his death. So while I hated to put my little boy on drugs, Bill and I decided we should talk to the family doctor, Channing Bowen. He was our family doctor, but he was also a personal friend. Fortunately, Chan said, under no circumstances should you put Douglas on these drugs. They were powerful antipsychotics, and they could have damaged his brain as well as his body. And Chan said there's no indication that drugs would change somebody's sexual orientation. This was really very questionable science. No, you should bring your child home. He will be who he will be, and no pill is going to make any difference. Sometime later, when the kids were in the playroom, I took advantage of the opportunity to go in and talk to them. I told them about Aunt Barbara's brother and what had happened to him and how awful it had been. And I said, in my opinion, there was nothing wrong with being a homosexual. In fact, there were a lot of writers and artists and people of all professions who were homosexuals, and they were doing wonderful things in the world. And I said, in my opinion, things were going to get better for homosexuals. There was a society, I heard, something called the Mattachine Society, founded by brave men who were homosexuals, and they were working to make the world a better place where homosexuals could live as they were without being teased and bullied. And wasn't that a good thing? Well, the kids looked a little blank. They clearly didn't get why their mother had marched into the playroom and launched into a speech about homosexuals. Douglas didn't say anything. He didn't ask me any questions. I mean, ye gods, he was a little boy, for heaven's sake. What did he know of such things? But I could see by the look on his face that he'd at least heard what I said.
I love this idea of developing into a homosexual. Perhaps there's some kind of trajectory that we all go through. Thank you so much, Doug, and thank you, Malou, for being such an incredible mother. So we've come to the end now, and this is a moment at which I want to tell you what's going to be happening with the World Mother Storytelling Project. Now, this is a project for the world. It belongs to the world and in the world. It is every single one of our birthrights to tell our mothers' stories. So in the inaugural event of World Mother Live, which you can see on YouTube, also presented by Town Hall, you'll be able to see people from Israel, Palestine, also Mexico, India, South Africa. And we just see this movement as spreading only by each one of you taking it out into the world and encouraging people to join this movement. Now, we also have some very specific projects, and one of them is to create a curriculum for high school kids, teaching them how to listen to their mother's stories, how to ask those what happened questions, and then how to create those 4-minute stories that can be passed down the generations as a legacy of their mothers. Let's create an insurrection of mother stories. So we are asking for your financial support to be able to create this curriculum. The World Mother Storytelling Project is a non-profit organization, and we only raise money by donations. So with your donation of any amount, you can really help to spread this method and this movement across the United States and across the world. And at this time where we are all isolated and we're craving that kind of connection and intimacy, I can think of no better way of actually engaging with people in a very meaningful and immediate way. And this is one of the great benefits that's offered by this Zoom technology. And I apologize that sometimes it got a little muffled and garbled tonight, but I feel like the spirit of World Mother has come through tonight, no matter whether the sound was garbled or not. So please, I know that people have got many different things that they're wanting to support at the moment, but World Mother is really a way of opening the hearts of people, of bringing people to that state of longing that we all have, of love from and for our mothers. So the next installment or the next event will be on September the 21st at 7 p.m. And this episode is going to be called Rising Up. And this is about mothers who have really been able to rise up against the enormous challenges that life has put in their paths, rise up, overcome these challenges, and done amazing things in the world. So please send us your stories. We want to find these stories of rising up. So now we come to the end, and you're going to hear our closing montage, and you're going to hear the most magnificent song. And this is an anthem that was created by Majola Ganimede, specifically for the World Mother Storytelling Project. Now, I've never met Majola because he is currently on a 1-year process of becoming an indigenous healer. And so we have never been able to see one another on video. He's out in the wilderness of South Africa. But this anthem that he's created called Memeke talks of a child pleading to his mother to carry her on his back so that he won't be attacked by the wild vultures. And Majola also has an amazing album, which is called But Sissy. He's a queer South African man. Here you can see him. And you can find But Sissy on iTunes and on Spotify. And so, Majola, please take us out. And Town Hall, Jeff Mann, Alex, thank you so much for creating and helping us create this incredible program. To all the guests that joined us tonight, thank you so much. Sam Moss, my partner in World Mother Storytelling Project, I could not do this without you. And for all of you who've been watching tonight, please spread the word. And most importantly, go out and listen to your mother's stories and tell those stories. Good night.
Mama.